Well, hello again, traders, and welcome out. This is Songkit from Maverick Currencies, and let's begin our market coverage. It's a Monday. Let's start our week and take a look at the market analysis, see what's really moving and where we need to focus on. Looking at the market performance today, it was a quiet day, meaning we just had small moves. Percentage-wise, S&P only up 0.3%, VT stock, World Stock Index up 0.67%, and gold is also up 0.23%. The only double-digit gains that we saw was in the crypto and oil, which really had been struggling in the past couple of weeks. So we can see that we're just seeing some sort of relief rally there. But outside of that, it's pretty much a range-bound price action. This is the S&P chart, and we can see that we are trading within this range. So we are the moving averages are flatlining, which means that we are not really getting a big push one way or the other. So this is very important when you look at your strategy selection, that this is a range-bound price action. Same thing happening if you take a look at gold market. They were rallying, and now we are seeing gold just being trading in the sideways range. So not expecting a big move unless we break out of this range. Now the same story playing out in the bond yields market. You can see that we have been pretty much sideways for the last couple of months. So this is why we are not seeing a big movement across the board as far as the trend goes. This is range-bound currency and range-bound price action. While the volatility is actually low, both in the equity markets and in the currency market, we are seeing the intraday volatility is actually on the low end. So this is the market condition, and make sure you are preparing and adjusting to these market conditions. Let's take a look at how the performance was today. And then you can see that cryptos, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash up around 1.5%. Litecoin was a bit of an anomaly by 5.51%. But again, we have seen the Litecoin being very erratic. Either it's just up quite a bit or it's down quite a bit. It's not really following sort of a consistent pattern here. So we are focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum having a bounce here. But right now, don't really love to buy the cryptos here. And so far, these bounces are being sold off pretty quickly. Now, looking at the currency market, we are getting a nice movement across the board. But again, realize that we are getting a split move across the board. We are seeing the dollar, yen, euro, and Swiss franc being weak, while the pound, CAD, Aussie, and Kiwi has been on the stronger side. And that's exactly what we saw last week, where, we are seeing across the board, we're seeing this first half being underperforming and the other half being outperforming, and they switch places. Once we start to see the dollar strengthen, the yen strengthen, the euro strengthen, and the money start to come out of the growth currencies, the CAD, Aussie, and the Kiwi. So keep in mind what's moving, and that's really our focus. As far as the consistency goes, again, remember, while we're in this range-bound conditions, we're likely to trade these ranges until we break out one way or the other. Now, looking at the market outlook, we are sitting at a +1, and that's because we're still above the 50-day moving average, but the 20 is flatlining. Again, this is the area where I like to pay less attention to these moving averages, but more attention to the support and resistance level. That's what we do around the range-bound trading price action. Now, looking at the schedule, this is again tomorrow. We have the Canadian CPI. That will be something that we are focusing on, especially now Canadian dollar looking actually a little strong going into this report. So we'll have to see what this inflation number comes out. So far, we really haven't seen inflation running hot anywhere outside of the UK. So my expectation is not for sort of a hot number. But if there is a surprise somewhere, I would bet that there will be a big move. And that's something we always need to be prepared for. Outside of that, we have, again, few announcements this week. But this week is not as heavy on the news events. But this is where you need to pay attention to the relative strength and weakness. So let's do our currency analysis and see where the velocity score is and where we need to focus on. And right now, you can see the euro and the dollar did pull back. They were actually the best currency on Friday. So what we saw today was a bit of a rotation. The worst did better, and the better did worst. And this is always difficult for traders that are trading trends, that we are seeing this inconsistency. But in a range-bound condition, we are likely to see a couple of up days with a couple of down days, just things moving back and forth. On the stronger side, you can see the trend scores are not that strong for the Kiwi, Aussie, or even the CAD. These are all sitting at a 0 to a -1 as a trend score. But for short-term velocities there, the British pound is the only one technically that still looks good. Swiss franc is kind of in the middle here on hold. And the yen actually still kind of looks weak at a -2. So in the next 24 hours, the big question is that do we see a continuity or do we see sort of a resumption of the trend that we saw on last week? So let's take a look at possible trades ahead and make a little bit sense of this. So looking at the markets today, I mean, we had a big focus on the US dollar. We talked about in the currency room that we need a follow through. The price action was really strong on Friday, or the last Thursday and Friday, but we needed a follow through. So we're seeing a bit of a pullback here. And this is where we're seeing a bit of a mixed picture because this is a US dollar basket, meaning that we are looking at it an average for all the major currencies that we watch. But now if you take a look at DXY, we actually saw DXY moving higher, which makes it a little bit interesting because we haven't really moved higher above this, this moving average here for almost 2 months. The question is this a sign to buy the dip or is this a sign to still trade the range here? So again, this is why looking at some of the euro dollar crosses, you probably see a better movement. But outside of that, I'm not really 100% sold on this dollar strength. I need a little bit more confirmation. And what's the confirmation we're looking for? We see a rally, we see a pullback, and we see a quick recovery. If we can find a quick recovery and try to go higher, maybe we can make a more case that the dollar wants to go higher and these dips are going to be bought. But if you take a look at the US dollar currency basket, that is sideways. So I need a breakout above this area for us to get out of this range and get us a little bit more excited. So right now we are not in the buy the dip on the dollar yet, but we have to see if that is going to change in the coming days ahead. Outside of that, we can see the yen still failed to break out of the resistance. So comparing dollar against the yen, okay, I still like yen short over the dollar. So I think yen is still on my list here on the short side. So outside of that, we are seeing some continued weakness in euro and Swiss franc. I mean, Swiss franc looks a little bit better than euro, but again, you can see that euro started off the day a bit on the negative side. So right now, you can see that we have been trading above this moving average, and now we're trading below this moving average. So right now, maybe we are due for a basing pattern on the euro before we turn lower. This was definitely a pivot low. We made a lower low. I would love to see a base or making a lower high to short into. Outside of that, let's take a look at British pound, which is still looking strong. I mean, look at the moving average. It's still holding up, and this trend line is still holding up. So right now, we are still in the no man's land in the British pound. If we can get above this area, we can expect a further rally, but this is where we can easily see a rollover as well. So I'm keeping the pound still with the trend, but also keeping in mind that I'm very cautiously bullish here. Now, looking at some of the growth currencies, Canadian dollar, interestingly, is doing okay here, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still against a very strong level of resistance. So this is still a sideways currency price action. But even though on a 4-hour chart, you can see that the price action has been on the stronger side versus the weaker side. So the next 24 hours, we have the bank account, the CPI numbers. So hopefully we can find a catalyst. I would expect that if we break this level, this is the next level of resistance, and we might find the prices stall around that level. The true breakout will happen once we break out of the resistance. This has been going on for the almost most part of the year. So whenever you have these strong resistance levels, this is where you have to be very cautious. Most of the reversals happen around that level, but then if we can break through this, then there's an expectation for further highs as well. But right now, let's keep the Canadian dollar as a +1. Now, looking at the Australian dollar, these are the currencies, again, don't look the best as far as the technical goes, but right now we're getting a little momentum here. So this is where I want to take a bit of a time to talk about trading the right strategy for these conditions. We are getting nice little decent moves on a day-to-day basis. For example, a day like today, we had a nice movement both in the Aussie and even in the Kiwi, which got hammered last week. So there's good decent short-term opportunities that we can take advantage of. For example, Kiwi dollar did rally even though the chart looked horrible, but had a nice little reversal here. Same thing with the Aussie dollar, had a nice little rally here. Same thing goes with the Euro Aussie. They did pull back, so there are movements taking place. There might not be as much of a continuity to it, but we can still take advantage of these day-to-day movements. So this is going to be the focus here. I'm not really expecting a big breakout one way or the other unless we really start to see a breakout happen across the board. But for now, let's keep our expectations in check. We are getting movements. I mean, dollar CAD is a good example as well. You can see dollar CAD on an hourly chart. I mean, look at these movements here. We are seeing back and forth. We did break lower here. That was a nice little move from 136 down to 133. And here we got a big rally from 133 to 135, and now we're pulling back. So there's definitely meat on the bone to have. But you just have to be using the right time frame for your entry and exit, and not really get committed too long term, because right now it's very difficult to get behind a move and say, well, yeah, this is what's likely to happen, because we are not getting that consistency. So during this period, stay with the markets in front of you. And if you want a trend trader, you might want to be sitting on the sideline, because you need those daily trends to kind of develop in order to get the moves going. So back to our conclusion, equity markets likely to remain range bound, and expecting a similar thing with the currency market as well. But at the same time, movements are happening. So focus on velocity and currency in play. Today was, the dollar and the yen and the euro, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. You just have to look at relative strength of weakness and go with it. And make sure you're doing a proper position sizing. This is the time to really cut down on your risk here, and maybe use a smaller percentage to get into a trade, because getting into a trade, we're not really seeing a big reward to risk ratio, so we need to just make sure that we're not taking excessive risk right now. Looking at the schedule, again, we will be meeting. We don't have a live class this week, but we'll be having our videos as scheduled. But outside of that, if you have any questions, reach out. Other than that, happy trading, and we'll see you next update. Cheers.